Welcome to this segment taken from our J Revolution NEOGENESIS program.
Part 2. When your will and God's will collides. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." God has a plan and calling for your life. You can find scripture references for this in Psalm 139 verses 14 to 18 and Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11. When you made the decision to accept Christ and follow Him, you made the decision to obey Him and to follow the plan He has for your life. Many Christians end up not fulfilling God's plan and purposes for their lives. Why? One of the key reasons for this is that at some point, the plan that God has in mind for them might not be the plan they had in mind for themselves. There may come a time when God asks you to walk away from something you wanted or loved, or to turn down an opportunity that you may have always desired in order to follow and fulfill His plan for you. Matthew chapter 16 verses 24 to 26. Then Jesus told His disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul?" When God asks us to do this and we obey Him, it can be very difficult and painful. However, it is important to understand that God has a better plan for you than you could ever imagine or desire for yourself. The sad thing is that most who turn away from the will of God for something else or someone else will end up losing the very thing they were trying so desperately to hold on to. The only thing that is sure and permanent is within the will of God. One of the life principles from Dr. Charles Stanley is this: whatever you acquire outside the will of God will turn to ashes. You can hold on to your life, your will, your desires, but it will eventually come to nothing. Following the will of God is an eternal investment in yourself and in the lives of others. Possibly one of the most difficult decisions you may have to make in your walk with God is when you reach a point where you want something or desire something deeply or have a dream, and God asks you to lay it down and follow His plan instead. When you put God and His will for your life daily before your own will, then you are taking up your cross and following Jesus. You make the decision to give up everything to follow Him and serve Him for an eternal reward and inheritance, and not an earthly reward. Matthew chapter 7 verses 13 to 14 says this: "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it."
Part 3. Brokenness. This teaching on brokenness is taken from the teachings and writings on brokenness by Dr. Charles Stanley. I am sure as a child of God, you desire to be used by God to make a difference and impact, and most importantly, to fulfill the unique plan God has for you. However, as human beings, and especially in today's narcissistic society, we are often tempted to act independently from God and to take matters into our own hands. God uses brokenness in our life as a method of dealing with our selfish self-life, in which we try to act independently from God. He will allow difficult situations or processes to come into your life in order to start building your character. Beware, when God starts putting you through a difficult process, don't run away from it. Seek Him for help to get through it and to learn from it. Many Christians run in the opposite direction as soon as pain and tribulations come, refusing to believe that God would allow this or use these circumstances in their lives. But He does. Because Christ has purpose to bring every area of the believer's life into submission to His will, He will continue to remove every obstacle necessary for our complete surrender and full trust in Him. God has to break our self-will, not our spirit, in order to make us effective, impactful, and valuable servants. God does not give in to your self-will. We have to come into alignment with His will in our lives. Not coming into alignment with His will impact our effectiveness in our lives and in the lives of others. For example, I have heard many people speak who were eloquent and intelligent in their presentation, well-spoken, well-researched, but there was no power in what they were saying. It was all based on their knowledge and speaking abilities, not on God or being led by the Spirit. I have also heard some very uneducated, unschooled, and very average people speak, and their words sliced through my heart and made a massive impact on me. This is because it wasn't their words or agenda, but because they were speaking under the power and direction of the Spirit of God. This happens because a lot of Christians are operating on the basis of their education, their degrees, their talents, and their abilities. When you operate in this way, you will not make much impact or progress. It's about being used by the hand and Spirit of God, which goes beyond our abilities and talents. The good news is, you don't need to be talented, good-looking, speak well, have a great education, or high IQ to be used powerfully by God. You just have to be willing to obey Him no matter what, and rely on His Spirit to accomplish His purposes through you. Are you living for Him, or are you living for yourself? Are you more interested in what Christ can do for you, or on how much you can impact others for Christ?
Thanks for listening to this segment from our J Revolution program. During times of darkness, struggle, and soul sickness, we can often question the meaning of life. To understand the true meaning of life, you first need to understand how you are made as a human being, as well as key spiritual foundations and principles you need to apply to your life. Find truth, peace, and fulfillment, and experience true transformation with the J Revolution program. You can access our full program online or sign up to an upcoming face-to-face or webinar on www.jrevolution.net/program. Our program is totally free for anyone, anywhere to complete.